All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today we're tackling one of the biggest questions you can possibly imagine, the origin of, well, everything. So, you've got modern science telling us the universe exploded into being with a big bang. And then you have the Quran from over 1400 years ago saying everything started from a single, joined together thing. So, are they talking about the same event? I mean, are these two totally different stories, or could they be two sides of the same incredible coin? We're going to dig in and see. Let's get started. Okay, so first things first. If you wanted to build a universe from scratch, what would you even need? What's on the shopping list? Well, the legendary Stephen Hawking used to say you'd need three basic things: matter, energy, and space. Simple enough, right? But then, way back in 1905, this guy Albert Einstein shows up with a little equation. You've probably seen it, and it just changed everything. So what Einstein's big idea did was simplify our cosmic recipe. He basically proved that matter and energy, they aren't separate things at all. They're just two forms of the same thing. It's kind of like ice and water, right? One's solid, one's liquid, but at the end of the day, they're both just H2O. You can melt ice into water, you can freeze water into ice, and it's the same deal here. Matter can be converted into energy, and energy can become matter. Just like that, our ingredient list goes from 3 down to 2. Okay, so we've got it down to just energy and space. But that's still the million-dollar question, isn't it? Where did they come from? Well, the first big clue didn't show up until 1929, thanks to an astronomer named Edwin Hubble. Now, to really get what Hubble found, we need a quick detour into something called the Doppler effect. And trust me, you already know what this is. You hear it every time an ambulance passes you. You know that sound, that high-pitched whee as it's coming towards you, that turns into a low woo as it drives away? That's the Doppler effect. The sound waves are getting squished together on the way in and stretched out on the way out. And here's the cool part. The exact same thing happens with light. So if a galaxy is heading towards us, its light waves get compressed, and that shifts its color towards the blue end of the spectrum. Scientists call this a blue shift. And if it's moving away from us, the light waves get stretched out, and that shifts the light towards the red end. You guessed it, that's a red shift. Super simple, right? Blue is for coming closer, red is for moving farther away. So Hubble gets this giant new telescope, points it up at the sky, and starts looking at all these distant galaxies. And what he finds is just wow. It was absolutely stunning. Almost everywhere he pointed that thing, he saw red. Galaxy after galaxy was showing a red shift. What does that mean? It means they were all moving away from us. And get this, the craziest part was that the farther away a galaxy was, the faster it was speeding away from us. The takeaway from this was mind-blowing. It wasn't just that galaxies were flying through space like cars on a highway. No, the very fabric of space itself was stretching, expanding, and carrying all the galaxies along for the ride. Like Stephen Hawking said, this one single discovery was a total game changer. It flipped everything we thought we knew about the universe right on its head. Okay, so if the universe is expanding, getting bigger and bigger all the time, that leads to a really obvious question, right? What happens if we hit rewind on that cosmic movie? You got it. If you run the clock backwards, all those galaxies that are flying apart suddenly start rushing back together. Rewind it far enough, and everything gets closer and closer and closer until, bam, every single bit of matter and energy in the entire universe gets squeezed down into one single point. A point so small it's basically nothing, but so dense it's, well, everything. Scientists call this crazy starting point the singularity. And believe me, this is where our story gets really weird. Why weird? Because at that precise point, everything we know about the universe just stops working. All our laws of physics, even Einstein's brilliant theory of general relativity, they just break. They can't tell us what's going on inside that singularity. Even Stephen Hawking had to admit it, science literally cannot predict how the universe began. It's a total mystery. So here's the bottom line. Science can walk us all the way back, 13.8 billion years, right up to the front door of creation. But right there, it hits a brick wall. It can't peek inside, it can't tell us what came before the Big Bang or what lit the fuse. You know, the whole question of before might not even make sense because a lot of physicists think that time itself was born in that very moment. Okay, so let's hit pause on modern science for a second and switch gears completely. We're going to look at a totally different source of information. a text that was revealed more than 1,400 years ago, long, long before anyone had even dreamed of a telescope, let alone ideas like general relativity or an expanding universe. So in the Quran, in chapter 21, you find this really incredible verse. It says that the heavens and the earth, and you can think of that as the whole cosmos, were once one single joined together thing. The Arabic word it uses is rutk. And then the verse says the single thing was separated. And the word for that is fatk. Now, let's just look at what those words mean. Rot, that means something that's joined, or fused, or even sewn together into one mass. And fak, that means to unsew, to split it apart, to separate it. So on one side, you have science talking about a singularity, a single joined point, which is followed by the Big Bang, this massive separation. And on the other side, you have the Quran talking about rot, a joined entity, followed by fak, a separation. I mean, the parallels there are pretty hard to ignore. So what happened next? After that first big moment of separation, the story of the universe gets even crazier. Let's keep following both these threads, science and scripture, and see where they go. Okay, so back to the science. For the first few 100,000 years after the Big Bang, the universe was just this thick, hot, foggy soup of particles. You couldn't see through it. Light was just trapped. And even after it cooled down enough for light to travel, for hundreds of millions of years, there was nothing, just darkness. Scientists actually call this the cosmic dark ages. No stars, no galaxies, just these giant invisible clouds of gas floating in the black. And this is where we find another really interesting point of comparison. Because in chapter 41 of the Quran, it describes the early state of the heavens using the word dukhan. And what does dukhan mean? It literally translates to smoke, a hot, dense gas that you can't see through. I mean, that is an unbelievably accurate way to describe the state of the early universe, something we only figured out with modern science. So out of this giant cloud of cosmic smoke, one force started to take over. Gravity. It began pulling all that gas together into these enormous clumps. And as these clumps got bigger and denser, the pressure and heat in the middle just went through the roof until they hit about 15 million degrees. And at that point, something incredible happens. Nuclear fusion kicks in. A star is born. The first lights in the universe switched on, ending those cosmic dark ages. And these first stars, they were like giant cosmic factories, forging heavier elements like carbon, oxygen, and iron in their fiery cores. And when these giant stars reached the end of their lives, they didn't just fizzle out, they went out with a bang, a massive supernova explosion. And these explosions sprayed all those newly created heavy elements out across the cosmos. And here's where the story gets really personal for you and me. The astronomer Carl Sagan put it perfectly. We are made of star stuff. He meant that literally. The nitrogen in your DNA, the calcium in your bones, the iron in your blood, every bit of it was cooked up inside a star that died billions of years ago. You are literally a child of the cosmos. So let's just recap for a second. We've seen how the scientific story and the one in the Quran seem to follow this incredibly similar path, right? You've got a single starting point, a massive expansion, an early universe that's like smoke, and then everything we see today forming out of that material. The alignment is pretty remarkable. But there is one last big question, a seeming contradiction we have to tackle. And that's the question of time. Science tells us this whole story took 13.8 billion years to unfold. The Quran says it happened in 6 days. So how can both possibly be true? Is that a flat-out contradiction that breaks the whole comparison? Or is it maybe a question of perspective? Could it be that our human idea of a day just doesn't apply to a creator who exists outside of time altogether? Now that is a deep question, one that makes you rethink the very nature of time itself. But that, my friends, is a story for another explainer.